when I was a kid, I remember I read like a tech magazine at the magazine section of a bookstore, and there was a part of it that was all about this company that was trying to develop this like archival digital format that was like basically like a stone orb that you would put into like a machine. So it was more of like an analog, more of an analog, but like a permanent analog way to view and keep digital media. And that always kind of like stuck with me, but I don't think that ever happened or really came into fruition. But it was like an interesting idea, and it brought up like also a certain amount of anxiety about like the being able to hold on to just videos and photographs. But so I guess like I didn't really think of this when I didn't think of that particular moment when I was making these videos, but well, no, I shouldn't say that. I guess I think subconsciously it informed kind of the creation of them, because I guess the idea is that they kind of represent like preserved archived memories. And the first video, the one Snow Fort, would be a memory, and then the second video, Greenhouse, would be a preserved dream. And the idea is I kind of, what I did with the videos is I basically just turned them into very long GIFs. So it's just I just turned each frame of the film or of the videos into a GIF, and then just kind of compiled them all together. So it's kind of like an animation. And it's like a very like GIF is like a very like unlikable kind of format, I feel like. And I guess but I also thought in the kind of imaginary context that I created for the videos to exist in, that they're these kind of archives, like viewed in the future, if that makes sense. Like if you had the stone orb and you found it and you watched it in the future, the GIFs and the way that I applied them in the videos, I felt like was an appropriate way to symbolize, I guess, the degradation of a memory over time. I don't know if that makes sense, but I do like to improvise quite a bit. It's sort of a cycle of going in between trying to really structure things so that I can improvise again. I kind of go like back and forth between those two modes, because I can get very frustrated with sitting on the computer mocking up sculptures and planning things. So same thing with all other, like in film too, if you're making a movie, it's like you spend all this time preparing, and then in order to break away from your preparations, I guess. I mean, I do a bit of both. Pretty much most of what I do, it's like setting up an environment for me to improvise in, I guess. Like I can be very kind of like particular about setting things up, I guess, without knowing. I don't know. I don't always have the clearest of intentions, or maybe my intentions are, I don't know, subconscious, I guess, but they have a coherence to them. Yeah. But probably the editing and also the finding of the footage too is, I think in the case of these videos, they're pretty improvisational, I would say. Yeah, they're pretty improvised, but I guess the context is structured. The idea is that I'm making the videos as if they were in, yeah, I'm making a context for them, I guess, as well, which is that they're like archived memories seen in the future, like hundreds of years in the future, that have kind of degraded over time. and an archived dream. That makes sense, I guess. Does it make sense? I think in general, I want to try to find things in the world that are kind of left behind or kind of not paid attention to very much. I think that's the things that are like things I like about the songs is because they're usually very old. And in the case of these videos, the songs are probably from like 10, 11, 12 years ago. And they're like recordings that somebody made, but they're anonymous recordings that I just found on forums and blogs and things, like covers and of songs. Well, one of them's an original song. The one from Greenhouse is an original song by someone, but and then the other song is a cover. I guess I wonder what it is. A part of it is just the sadness, I think, for things that just kind of go unseen and unheard and wanting to bring them into the light. And then another part of it would be, I think I tend to believe that things that are obscure or forgotten or left behind somehow kind of culminate and rise to power in some way, or these kind of bits and pieces will kind of rise to prominence. I generally think that things that are on the fringes of kind of people's collective sort of consciousness are bound to become center stage, or at least more in the kind of periphery, and then eventually rise in an abstract way. It might not be in a very direct sense, but and I can see that in ways even now, like the kind of with these old kind of scraps of videos and things, like it's important to me, I think, to remember. I don't know. I've since I was a little kid, I've always been very interested in finding things that people aren't paying attention to, that I can kind of like cherish for myself. So that's a part of it. It's just like a natural kind of desire to find things that no one else knows about, or that's untouched, that I can kind of like create a space with, I guess. But then another part of it is, I think there is an aspect of like investigating or like looking for these bits and pieces of forgotten parts of the past that exist on the internet, of these different people's lives, recorded in song or in video, and in order to try to understand the world and also understand myself and other people, and kind of begin to collect a vision of the distant future as well, and the kind of what will lay ahead beyond my own lifespan. And like I've said, yeah, I guess that falls in line with my idea or my belief that these kind of whatever's happening on the fringes of society or culture, generally in the future, it could take hundreds of years even, but will come into some form of prominence. So I guess the idea is, by examining these things or digging for them and finding them, there's some kind of vision that will arise. And I feel like generally there is. I don't know if it's an accurate vision of the future, but it just is one, and it feels intuitively like, I don't know, real or substantial enough for me to continue to want to like investigate these things. Yeah. Which is why I'm very interested in like in the future, I guess, the distant future and the distant past, or maybe even not so distant, maybe just a couple hundred years or whatever. But yeah, I'm interested in those things. I feel like that's a big purpose of art, is to kind of envision things, you know. I guess, you know, I mean, I see myself as one in like I kind of generally, I don't know if this is controversial or weird, but I generally see people as being like pretty similar to one another. Maybe in our personalities are quite different, but like fundamentally, I think people are like have kind of a range of experiences and emotions that are kind of like there's a quality of being a human that we all kind of share, and you kind of have more or less of these different qualities, kind of, but the quality is the same. So I guess like I don't know, I see myself as kind of like a catalyst, or as like a just a I guess by absorbing these bits and pieces into my work as like a what the word is, like forming kind of like a laser beam, you know, and I can kind of just be like the prism in the center that just kind of shoots it into the future to try to see something like very far away in time is what I'd say. Yeah, but that's kind of like I don't know. Yeah, it's weird for me because I feel like more or less I've been making kind of the same artwork since I was like a kid. You know, I grew up, my dad was a college printmaking teacher, and he would take the computers from the school. We get free Apple computers, and they would already be preloaded with all the kind of creative applications of the time period. And he would also get hard drives full of music from his students, and they're art students, so they would have like somewhat like interesting music archives of things or whatever. So I had all this music on these computers and all this software, and I was the only child and single parents, so I would just spend a lot of time on the computer just looking through music, and to me it seemed like a whole different world that I was investigating and trying to understand, and that was like very complex, and a lot of the music was pretty obscure too, like weird, because the person my dad was getting this music from was like into that sort of stuff. It's kind of just like, I feel like for me, from my perspective, I've just been kind of following this kind of line or this thread that I was given when I was a child, and it kind of just fell into my lap, and I've just been kind of pulling on it this whole time, just going, because I do pretty much like the same thing. It's just a more evolved, a more kind of progressed form of it. You know, I spent tons of time on the computer looking for music, and then I listen to the music over and over again. As I watch movies, I'll watch movies and listen to music at the same time. I'll watch movies and write stories, listen to music, play video games, and just they all just kind of meld together, I guess, you know, into something. But I think what we're talking about now, this kind of idea of seeing of envisioning like a future, is more like me trying to understand the purpose of why I was given this thread, I guess, you know, trying to understand what's the meaning of it, you know, because I think there is a meaning to it that's substantial. I don't think it's just a pursuit of being I don't know, an entirely selfish sort of pursuit, I guess. Yeah. I think very recently, I think I've operated like pretty intuitively, like all the way through, without really thinking that much of like why I'm doing things. My main motivation in the past was just like I want to spend less time thinking about like I want to spend more time just trying to propel myself as far as I can into my own kind of practice, like just jump forward, than trying to build with my logic and conscious thought, trying to build like a little step ladder to get higher up into my art practice. I'm trying to just like throw myself into it so that I can get further. If that does that make sense at all? Like I feel like if I had to try to construct what my art practice was, it would be so slow and painstaking that I would just get like here. But I want to be further into it. But recently I started thinking about it more because I had a son. I have a child now who's almost a year old. And I think that kind of got me thinking more, and I have less time to spend. So it just got me thinking more about being intentional, or more, I guess, like deliberate with my time. And also, yeah, I think in my heart, I knew this type of thing. My work has always been kind of like about investigating my own childhood and my own memories and past, and also looking at other people's memories and past and dreams and visions, and kind of constructing that future. But I've been bringing it into the forefront of my mind in order to, I guess, yeah, just be kind of more deliberate with it. And also so I can talk about it with people. I feel like I've been very vague about my artwork intentionally, and been kind of like, fuck you or something a little bit in my heart. Like I have a little, like, I just don't, I've had this kind of mentality of like, I really don't like hand holding in art. And I feel like it's like gotten kind of out of control. But I'm trying to do the opposite. I think hand holding is okay and probably good. And maybe it would help me progress past to this point in my art practice. So I can kind of, if I can understand more what I'm doing, I kind of take it for granted and put kind of a tablecloth over it and just forget about it, and then start building more new ideas and more of a practice, maybe beyond what I've been doing since I was a child, or what I've been doing for the past several years. So like I think it's just ran its course. Like I can't just, me being intuitive all the time led me into like I said, being in a whatever, like a self-help cult. I just kind of like let the wind kind of take me wherever, and which I think was great, but it got me into some trouble, and it actually kind of took me off my path in a way, because I got into this cult, this kind of like cult of positivity, and like we did all these kind of bizarre exercises and stuff, and yeah, it changed the whole trajectory of my artwork and what it was about. My art kind of became about that, and like wanting to propagate that and those ideas, and I'm like, I want to be incorruptible, I guess. I want to build more of a foundation that I can stand on, so that I can't just be swayed in all different sort of directions, So, but I also have no regrets. I'm good with the goal and all that stuff. It was cool. Yeah, there is for sure. Yeah, I do feel like there is yeah, it's a way to keep some of these things. I think art too in general is like, it's the most, for me, it's like the most adequate way to kind of keep a diary of my own life as well. Like if I make something, uh, um, so yeah, I think it is a way of archiving these bits and pieces, and it's also, I think my artwork, for better or worse, it's kind of I think I want it to kind of be like one of those things too, in a way that kind of is like this thing on the kind of like periphery, that's like I'm very much inspired by things like that, obviously, like we said, and there's a part of me that wants to keep my artwork kind of like unseen, or parts of it to be just like those kind of forgotten bits and pieces. I want it to be like someone else can kind of like discover it, and find the things that I found, the archive, but also for my artwork to be seen in somewhat of a similar light, as kind of like yeah, as like a lost piece, like I did this show inside of a prison a while ago, and it was an empty prison, but the only people that saw it in person were just like me and my mom and my friend Mojo, who's in the Snow Fort video, and my friend Alex and a couple other people, and so all that's left is really the photographs of it. But the actual seeing of the show was like the way more spectacular and way more brilliant than the photos, but I kind of try to build that into the work sometimes. That's like, you're not supposed to see it or really understand it now, but it's supposed to be kind of like understood in the future. Just like these little bits and pieces that I find. It's like at the time they were made, they were like meaningless and no one cared, you know. Maybe I'm a part of the process of, I'm one of the people bringing these things to some kind of prominence, you know, because that's kind of what art is too. Art is kind of like, art brings things to prominence, I guess, you know, that are on the fringes. It's like whatever's happening in art is will usually become more mainstream in like 5 or 10 years and get absorbed more. And yeah, so I guess it's kind of built in. That's kind of the function of what I'm doing anyways. But I build that into my work as well. Like, or I've tried to, I've done it less recently, but when I first started, I did it more. And well, actually, the last show that me and Jake Cruzen just did a show together, and it was at a gallery here in LA that is great, but it's like very small. And I like didn't promote the show at all, hardly, or even want to tell people to go. It's like this weird part of me. It's, I want people to see the work, but I also want it to feel like this thing that like just a few people saw, and maybe they'll talk about it. And the pictures of it, I tried to make feel really like forgettable or dull, you know, not like really saturated like art photography usually is, and really bright, but just I want it to be forgotten and found later almost, which is like a kind of a bad business model, but it's like a good, it's just feels more true to what the work is trying to accomplish, you know. But yeah, but I mean, art is already, I think art can be both kind of, it can be, because art is pretty exclusive anyways, to be known, pretty on the edges, so yeah. At least like some artwork, I guess, not all of it, but it's part, the stuff that probably will be in this show or that people we know make and stuff. I kind of forget there's like this whole other weird part of the art world that's like weird paintings of like, I don't even know. But, yeah. Geometric, like cement, like I don't even know what it is, but those are cool too. I'm into that kind of stuff. I'm into all kinds of art, whatever it is. Yeah. Pretty simple actually to explain it. I just say that's kind of that's kind of like the point of it, is that it's defying your expectations of what art. That's like the first step for people to understand. Is that like, yeah, that's exactly the point. Is that it's a combination of it's hard for you to locate where this object came from, basically, and that's what gets you started to think about it. Where if you see a painting or something, you can kind of understand what it is, you know, fundamentally, because you have all this stuff. But if it's the goal, I feel like, is to make something that you can't locate, I guess, and then it starts you off kind of that energy of not being able to understand what it is kind of sends your mind off into a new sort of direction, you know. But yeah, or parts of it are locatable, but not entirely. Major parts are difficult to understand or don't fit together within how your mind kind of constructs logic, I guess, so, or understanding. Yeah. That's what I would say about that. And that usually helps. Then they're like, oh, that makes sense. It's like the better you are at doing that, usually kind of the more successful you are. It's like a pretty pretty like simple metric kind of, because I feel like usually artists who are able to do that well succeed fairly well. So yeah. It's like, don't look at my artwork. We're at my kids' school the other day. They're like, oh, you're an artist? Let's look at your artwork. And I was like, oh, look at it. It's like all like scary like children's furniture and stuff. It's like, I don't know what you're gonna think about me, because you can't make an appropriate assumption through the work, you know, because it doesn't actually, it's telling you lies kind of about what it is, sort of, you know. That's the point, I suppose. Yeah. But, in my memory, it was a tech magazine at a Hastings bookstore that I went to when I was a kid. I used to go to the magazine section. And I found this tech magazine, was looking through it, and it was this whole article about archival, like how to make digital media more archival, because hard drives fail and media just kind of degrades over time, and which I found to be very disturbing. So it's like, it's felt like everything is this stuff is very fragile, and it made me more aware of that. And then, yeah, there was a company, it said, I believe, that was in the process or trying to build momentum to create this orb reader. Like it was like a marble, looked like a marble, and then it went into this reader, and you could watch a movie on it or look at pictures, I guess. And the idea was that it would last long enough into the future that someone could find it, because that's kind of like the disturbing thing about digital media, is that it's not very durable. It might, especially with how much of it there is too. It's just like trash kind of, but not even like plastic trash, just like cardboard trash, really. But so yeah, I think yeah, and I think the GIF kind of format because like something I also like to do is I try to look at things, or I just feel drawn to looking at things that are kind of like unpopular, I guess. And in my mind, GIFs, or the idea of a GIF, is kind of like dumb, like at least now, you know what I mean? And it was before too, but it's even more now, feels like. And I think the idea of like trying to look like, when something becomes dumb in your mind, you kind of just, you throw it away, sort of, and trying to look into it more and try to find a piece of it that is true and not that is persistent. That's not, you can't throw it away with the dumb parts, And I think there's something about making this kind of like a really long GIF. It's like a GIF that's like, it's a pretty arduous process actually to do this. Like, it's not that bad because I can just automate it in Photoshop, but I edit the video in Premiere, and then I export the frames of the video, and then I create an automation in Photoshop so that it turns each frame into its own individual GIF, and then recompile it into an animation that you see. And there's something kind of like, it's quite dumb in some ways. It's like, it kind of just looks like it's just, you put like a posterized filter on it, sort of, which is like probably like passe or whatever. It's like dumb too. But I think there's something about it. If there's something about it that it like, if I imagine what was on the orb, I feel, and if it degraded over time, over hundreds of years, this is what I imagine it would look like, I guess. It would look like a long GIF, like a very long GIF. And I also don't know if many people make GIFs that are probably this long either, because it's like thousands and thousands of images. So it's like, I don't know, yeah. So that's what I imagine it would look like, And it has this, because you are creating a GIF out of the individual images, it's inconsistent. Like one image will have a different arrangement of colors, because it's processing the images one at a time. And when it does that, it calculates what's the most prominent color, what are the most prominent colors in the image, because what a GIF does is it just reduces the color spectrum of an image to much fewer colors. And yeah, so it has kind of a, I don't know, like a film effect, like a degraded film effect to it. And yeah. So, and that's something I like to do, is I like to imagine that the work comes not from me. You know what I mean? When I'm making it, kind of. So like, I like creating an imaginary context that it feels like the work came out of, I guess. So, at least when I'm making it, that might not be apparent to other people when they look at it. But when I'm making it, sometimes I like to do that. And that could be in the way of like, I don't know, there's a lot of ways that can happen, but yeah, sometimes I like to create a other context other than the art context for the world to kind of, for the work to be in, you know, and but yeah. The idea that that the videos come from this orb, you know, that's being viewed in the future, something like that. It's kind of like an overly complicated thing to think about, but for me, it keeps things fresh, kind of, to think of these. Like right now, I'm working on the show, and I'm thinking of the show as a concept for a boat racing video game about kind of these like cybernetic orphan, or like these like orphans that do boat racing. It's like a very I don't know. It's like the show in my mind. Like instead of thinking of it as like an art show, I'm trying to think of it as I'm creating a concept for a video game. That's this very elaborate video game idea, which is like a boat racing game that has a very elaborate world building aspect to it that you just see in the background of the boat racing, and the characters have backstories and stuff, but it just helps me keep things interesting or fresh. If I'm thinking about things too much in terms of art and the context of the art world and stuff, it just like makes it kind of claustrophobic, sort of. So that probably, what I said probably didn't make any sense. The boat racing idea is like, but I was like, I had that idea the other day while I was walking. Boat racing game. But yeah, so that's something I like to do. That with these videos, that's kind of how I'm thinking about them, I guess. Yeah, in a way, which is like no one would probably garner that from looking at them just on the surface, but that's how I look at them, I suppose. And I guess I kind of tend to believe, which is maybe unrealistic, but I kind of believe that even if you're not being explicit about where the work comes from or what it's about, it still retains that within it, I guess. And you can kind of like, even if you're not conscious of it, you might absorb some of that if you really connect to the work or kind of like pay attention to it. Yeah. But even with my other work, I'll like write a whole screenplay and do world building and stuff, and kind of the objects, the sculptures kind of feel like they're born of that world, you know, but they're also simultaneously, it's like I made them and they're just artworks, and they're not, you know, I want them to exist in both ways, you know. I don't want it to just be like all about world building and like, I'm just, because it's not really what it's about exactly, like because I'm not really that proficient of a world builder. I'm not like a fucking I don't know, like a Tolkien or a whatever. Like I don't have the patience to do that at all. But I just build little bits of it. It's like a concept for a world that the works come from. So yeah, and it's all disjointed and, you know, fragmented, I guess. But yeah, it's kind of an offshoot of what we're probably talking about. But one thing I wanted to say, two things important. I feel like we hit a lot of the deeper stuff. And well, one, I wanted to describe more of the Snow Fort video and what just the bare bones of that, I guess. Snow Fort video is it's made up of footage that I found from 2009, and it's of my friend Mojo. He's been my best friend since I was in the third grade, and he's like my muse, honestly. It sounds kind of corny, but since I was a little kid, I just like pretty much kind of idolized him in a way, because I thought he was like so funny and charismatic, just such a unique individual, and just really admire that. And it's like, it really feels like me and him, like we were made for each other in a way. Like I don't know who I would be without him, kind of. And I don't know how I don't know how he feels, but that's how I feel. And but he's like a brother to me. And so, which is interesting in the context of this work. It's like the idea of archiving things or keeping things like yeah. But anyways, so the footage is from 2009, and basically what it was mostly was I just went to visit him in Kansas, and he actually got a new dog, like a puppy, and the dog actually died recently, like a year or two ago, and the a lot of the footage, original footage, has the dog in it, but the edit that I gave you guys, the video piece, I took the dog out completely and edited him out of all the shots. I guess because it kind of, I feel like doing that kind of builds in the premise somehow of it builds in this sense of loss, I think, and that you would probably feel if you watched, if you found an orb with a recording of someone's memories on it, almost, you know, like I feel like taking the dog out kind of builds in that feeling. And that's kind of what the video is about, I guess. I mean, I don't know. It's it also kind of builds in this idea of like jumping back and forth between times, kind of, you know, like in the video, the way I edited it and just the way the footage looks, he's like, he takes the shovel and he tries to erase the footprints of his dog. And but at the time of the footage, the dog was just beginning its life. So it's like, but there's like this knowing of the dog's inevitable death. And the fact that that is retained in the footage somehow, and through the editing, I guess, yeah, it builds in this idea that we're talking about of, but in a more kind of personal way, builds in this idea of bits of the past influencing the future, I guess. It kind of like makes that inherent in the video, if that makes sense, you know, because it's like his character is, yeah, assuming a role in the future, I guess. You know, he's assuming the role of the dog already being dead in that moment. But and it was very improvised footage. I just went there and just filmed him. He had built an igloo in his backyard, and we just like hung out in his igloo and smoked pot pretty much, and filmed each other. And or I filmed him mostly, and we walked to the gas station, and he did that crazy walk, and it was just all this. It was just a lot of just improvised footage of us just being together in that moment. This very special, like, felt like a, you know, feels now like a very special moment. But and also the other thing is the footage I found, I thought was erased, and I just happened upon this tape when you guys asked me to participate in this, and so it has that quality too, something that you thought was gone, that disappeared, this beautiful moment that I really don't even remember very well because I was stoned in an igloo the whole time. I don't really remember like what it was like that time period, but finding this recollection of it is very beautiful, and it makes me feel like there was something in that moment that foretold the present or even the future, and but that would have been forgotten or lost. So yeah, so I feel like that's a good, yeah, that's kind of what that video is about, more or less. Yeah, and it also has, I think we talked about this before, a silent film quality to it, which is like, Mojo is like a very charismatic, like very physical actor type of person. He's like a class clown kind of person who has excellent use of his body to look really funny, and he's willing to go to sacrifice anything physically I've seen him do like very harmful things to himself to make other people laugh. And he'll just kind of internalize the pain in order for other people to smile, and then which is fun, which is not yeah. So there's many parts to it, I guess, yeah, kind of happening. But it's like at the same time, it's a very unassuming little video that's like, yeah, probably has too much, yeah, very unassuming, yeah. But to me, when I'm looking at it, it has all these different aspects to it, yeah. So it has, again, that quality of being so forgettable, but has so much purpose to it at the same time. It's like a very sad quality that I like to have, but you know. So in contrast, that video represents the memory, an archived memory viewed in the future, and the other video, the greenhouse video, represents if you could archive one of your dreams and put it onto one of these orbs, and that's what it would be. And so appropriately, the footage in that video is all found material, yeah, the footage is all of it's a combination of things, but it uses footage from middle school kind of forensic classes. They do these mock crime scenes, or they used to. I'm not sure if they do anymore with the climate of like school shooting and stuff, but it's kind of like just weird, kind of like pretty perverse to do that now, I imagine. But which is also interesting, I guess, to kind of think about. But yeah, that video is more about dreams, I guess, than memory. And for me, my dreams are primarily very much about places, and my dreams are kind of like a compilation, or like kind of a they're like merged environments that I'm inside of, and it's usually like schools and like public architecture kind of combined with like waterways and infrastructure kind of, and kind of like a series of a series of personal moments kind of mashed together into these I don't know, bizarre places. And yeah, I think the film represents that. I think yeah, that one is interesting. It's kind of a perverse film. I think the quality that I wanted to have in it is this feeling of like investigation, I guess, or we talked about this before. A lot of my work is like investigating my own memories and past to kind of like construct some understanding of the future, like we've been kind of talking about. So I think it's important to me that things feel like they have like everything is kind of standing on each other, you know. It's like if you're playing like a game of chess or something, like you want all of your pieces to kind of like support one another and kind of all be working in tandem. And I want the works to feel very like there's layers of support kind of built in, like everything is propped up, I guess. So there's like this, yeah, significance of each detail kind of referencing the deeper purpose of the work. Yeah. I'll say. But well, I guess the greenhouse video started because I've had like a pretty good playlist of like forensic, like school, college, high school, middle school forensic class videos in my kind of arsenal of like things that I've found. Arsenal's the wrong word, just archive. It sounds so like douchey. In my archive of stuff I've found, I've had these videos and known about them for a long time. And I've also had a lot of videos of like, what do they call it? Mock trials, which is also featured. Like in schools, they'll do mock trials. Basically just like laying the groundwork for some early like legal career in criminal justice, basically. Like that's the idea, I suppose, of having those types of classes at the school. And I think they're actually usually ran by like the local, whatever police department or something does it. And so it has a particular purpose of inspiring young people to become investigators and detectives. And so I've always found that to be pretty interesting and pretty relevant to kind of just my general interest of like being an investigator of kind of your own memories and your own past, like a detective. And also, yeah, I guess it has that. I guess it has that weird kind of quality of like the young people learning about being a detective, investigating crime of the past. This one's hard for me to talk about. I don't know why. I think because this video in particular feels kind of disturbing. I think there's pretty disturbing quality to it that's like hard for me. I think I need to address it maybe because it's like footage. The video is basically like a music video or like a montage of footage that I found of these forensic like middle school, high school, college crime scenes, as well as I guess I found like I think that's what it was. It's just like one of those class project videos. Like, you know, when you're a kid, like maybe you have the opportunity to make a video for a class with your friends, where you got to like film in the hallways of the school maybe, and like have fun, you know, and like make some crazy inside jokes in the video that you can laugh at and while you're at school. So there's footage of these kids making this video that's like a murder, basically. I believe they made it for like some part of their science curriculum that, this is what I imagined, had to do with forensic investigation. So I have this video of them like dragging their friend in like a body bag. And so there's like that, which is relatively disturbing. I think just the idea of like kids being involved in like a murder investigation for young people is like an aspect of that that's somewhat there's like a fear or an like a little like unnerving, maybe you're off kilter kind of, and also because of the prevalence of school shootings today and things, which is like part of why I made the video too, honestly. I think is like a way of talking about that without addressing it in such a direct way, more nuanced kind of way, more just kind of like thinking about the environment that creates that, I guess, thing in the world, which is like an environment where there's like this criminal justice kind of baked into all of our institutions. But so that's a part of the video for sure. And it's also a part of the video is also about like, I think most people experience some level of trauma in their childhood. I think most probably do, some more than others. And I think probably most people, I don't know if this is true, but some amount of people, maybe a majority, maybe less, probably experience like pretty severe trauma, I think, on the planet as a whole when they're a child. And so I think that's something to be conscious of, that's like maybe not addressed, or is very difficult to address in a meaningful way in an art context. And so I'm interested in trying to do that, especially for kids, because I experienced a lot of trauma in my childhood. And I really just feel for this kind of like this pain for knowing that, you know, that there's so many young people out there who are probably experiencing similar or equivalent or just any form of trauma. Just being a child is a very terrifying experience, especially in the modern world, I feel like today. And I just had a child as well, so I'm thinking about this. And so I'm wanting to address that, but also like so much of like what you do as a person in order to better yourself is kind of when you've been through something like that's traumatic, is like going back into those memories and trying to, in order to try to understand who you are, because you can be so blind to your own thoughts and behaviors. And the way to do that is to kind of look at your subconscious and to also look into your past. And so I guess, again, there's that kind of back and forth between, I guess, the small and the big picture, kind of like a part of our journey, a part of like a human journey experience of life is this kind of investigation of yourself and of your memories. And yeah, and that's also part of what I'm interested in doing as an artist, I guess. That's also what the work is doing too, but in not investigating my past, but just investigating kind of the collective past of people, and also in order to see the future, like we said. But I think this video kind of focuses more on the kind of trauma aspect of being a person. And if this were an archive of someone's dreams seen in the future, what would it say about our kind of collective trauma, now in the world? There's a beeping outside. I'll draw attention to it, but for the sake, I feel like that was the culmination of my point. But yes, the video, I would say if this video, if you had an orb in the future that had a dream on it, and this is what it would say something about the collective trauma kind of our modern whatever on people, I guess, today. Yeah, so that's a part of that video. And I don't know about the greenhouse aspect of it. I haven't really deciphered that yet, and why it's called greenhouse and why it kind of starts and ends. And as they're moving through the greenhouse, it's like there's these kind of like dishes of soil and things, and they as you reach each aspect of the greenhouse, it turns into another clip or image. And so I think that would be appropriate. Thinking of the greenhouse as like this designed environment, kind of similar to the schools and hospitals and prisons and places that kind of are the designed environments of sometimes our collective trauma, or so I think that's an interesting point there, and I think it's fitting, if the video is supposed to be a dream, I think, to interpret it as a dream, and I think that's a pretty appropriate interpretation of it. Yeah.